All right, everybody. This is JJ Talks, and we are going to do a wild video here. This comes in as a comment from a viewer saying, "Hey, Jeff, what do you think of the flat Earth theory? Is the Earth flat or is it round?" And I'll just tell you right off the bat, I still do believe the official account that the Earth is round. Now, I know plenty of flat Earth people who I've gone on boats with who sit there and drink beer and talk about flat Earth the entire time. I've had people text message me at 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock in the morning trying to convince me that the Earth is flat over text message. I get it. And some of their arguments do have validity, but at the end of the day, I still default to the Earth is round. Now, I know that in saying that, that's automatically going to trigger about 1/3 of the population of viewers on this video, and they're automatically just going to downlike the video because that's typically what the flat Earth community does when you make such an absurd statement that the Earth is round, right? And let's go ahead and talk about why I personally don't think the Earth is flat. Okay, so for me, it's mostly in an airplane. It's in the lunar eclipse. And also, if I'm just looking at the stars, whether it be a telescope at the Pluto or a telescope at Mars or any planet, the Moon, they're all circular. They're all circle planets. So why would the one anomaly in the solar system or in the entire outer space be planet Earth? Planet Earth just so happens to be this flat floating disk, right? That's the theory. And if you want to know what the flat Earth general consensus is of what that looks like, this is it. So the flat Earth people, they say that the Earth is surrounded in this ice sheet. And their argument is that a Navy admiral was trying to penetrate Antarctica and get around it or go through it and gave up. Admiral Byrd was his name. If you want to watch a really interesting documentary on YouTube that will kind of bore you, but at the same time, it's got some useful information for you, check out Admiral Byrd's expedition to Antarctica. And this is that ice sheet that they say surrounds all of planet Earth. Okay. Now, another thing to keep in mind is, I don't know if you guys have gone south of the equator, but when you go south of the equator, the direction of the toilet water sometimes, I believe it's theory to change. I never actually tested it out, but the toilet water spins in the opposite direction. That I cannot confirm or deny, but I'm pretty sure that has been proven. But I did go to Australia and New Zealand. I did not actually test that out. But for those of you who live south of the border or south of the equator, maybe you can test that. Now, if we're just looking at this theory, if that's the case, why would that happen where the water would spin the opposite direction as the top of the globe as opposed to the bottom of the globe? Okay, so that's one thing that if that is indeed true, that kind of is an interesting, that's a win for the the Earth is a globe, okay, community. Now also, when I flew from Copenhagen, Denmark to Los Angeles, this was the route that we took. Just like that. Okay? So that does not, this flat Earth theory does not have I cannot prove anything based on that flight that would detest that this is inaccurate, right? Now, because I remember when we did fly from Copenhagen, if we just look at the Google Maps of that, for example, you would think that the route would go, okay, so here's Copenhagen about right here. You would think you would go this way, right, to Los Angeles. And that wouldn't go over the North Pole or Greenland, right? But we did. And so on a spherical Earth, on a globe Earth, a circular Earth, a ball, that's kind of an interesting route to take if it's not flat, right? So the next thing would be, well, what about a flight? So there's one flight that can really test it, in my opinion, and it would be the flight from Australia to South America or Australia to Africa. Does that ever happen? And if it doesn't, why is that? And if we go back to that flat Earth map, I mean, if you were to go from Australia to South America, that would take quite a long time. So the idea is that you would fly from South America you'd have to go to Los Angeles to get to here. So you would really want to calculate how long it would take to go from Sydney to Santiago, because in a globe, on a global map, right, with the Earth being a circle or a globe, it would appear that you would want to fly directly from Sydney to Santiago, right, down here. But why do most flights originate from Sydney, go to like North America, and then down? Doesn't that sound like a waste of jet fuel when you could just do it that way? Well, to the flat Earth theory's sphere, what they have, let me go back to that right here. That would make sense on this, right? Because in order to get from Sydney, you'd have to go over here. So that kind of doesn't back out for the round Earth, right? It kind of goes in favor of the flat Earth. However, if you do actually search it, and we can search that, let's just do that right now. Flights from Chile or Santiago to Sydney. And we want to know if it's a direct flight, right? So is it a direct flight? Qantas. Non-stop. So there are direct flights. Now, let's see what this one does. So this one goes Sydney to, well, I don't know what SCL is. But that's one thing that we'd have to check on, this flight, because or you could do one from Sydney to Johannesburg or Perth to Johannesburg. But that's kind of an interesting angle to take. And by the way, guys, the point of this video is not to sway you one way or the other, to convince you that the flat earthers are Looney Tunes or that the earth is round. It's more than anything, what do we need to really be looking into when we're trying to get it? Because all that really matters at the end of the day is the truth. Not my opinion, not your opinion. It's let's be truth seekers here. So as truth seekers, we've got to be looking at some of these things that are important to look at. And with all that being said, when you're looking at a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, is what I meant. Why is it that you see a sphere or like a globe shadow across the moon? It's not like could a disk do that? Could a flat disk cast that kind of shadow? I mean, here's the idea. I mean, you have the circular sun, unless the flat Earth community says that the sun is also a disk and that the moon is also a disk. I don't know. Maybe they do. But you could see how this would all line up with the Earth is round right here. Okay? So lunar eclipse, something to really pay attention to and evaluate when you're trying to get into that. This is in another language, so we can't really get any notes off that. But take a look at, put some thought into the lunar eclipse idea, right? Now, if we wanted to get into this a little bit more, how do flat earthers explain the equinox? We investigated. So the autumn equinox is upon us on Saturday, September 22nd. The sun will shine directly on the Earth's equator. Autumn will officially begin in the northern hemisphere, and the length of the day and night will nearly equal across the globe, or across the disk if you're a flat earther, right? So for flat earthers, the vocal online community of folks who believe the world is actually flat and science is a conspiracy, the equinox can be tricky to explain. Without axial tilt, so remember the Earth, according to the round earthers, the Earth is on an axis and it spins, and that's how you get day and night. That's another thing. How can you get day and night? I guess you could. I guess you could have a disk that gets day and night, but it seems to line up a lot more. It makes more sense for a round Earth if you look at the day and night and the seasons also. But flat earthers have come up with many answers to these niggling questions over the last century or so, and we've scoured the literature to share the explanations with you. Be warned, understanding them requires discarding a few thousand years of what you might consider accepted science. So the sun is really, really small. So this idea that the sun is small is completely against what they taught you in school, right? That the sun is many, many times larger than Earth, right? Many flat earthers agree that the sun perfectly circles the ring of the equator on the equinox. However, to account for the equal hours of daytime and nighttime, the models make a few tweaks to how the sun itself looks and behaves. So you can go on this website here on Live Science and kind of get an idea of how the flat earthers view the day and night cycle, right? So that's how it kind of hovers, right? I guess. I mean, I laugh because it kind of looks funny, but who knows? I mean, that's a theory. I still think the Earth is round, but this is the flat Earth theory's idea of it. And I guess this would explain why Alaska in the wintertime only sees 4 hours of daylight, and in the summertime sees, 20 hours of sunlight. So kind of explain that with this theory, right? So let's see. I mean, would Alaska get less sunlight or more? It's kind of a question. I'd like to see this diagram from the flat earthers during winter and summer all year round. Okay, so that's another thing to consider when we're looking for the truth, because all we're trying to do is seek the truth. And the flat earth community is stating that the round earth theory is a lie, right? Which, could they be right? There is a chance they could be right. I don't personally subscribe to that at this particular moment, as I have no real reason to think that the earth is flat. So if you wanted to go into some of this, I mean, you can see the history here. It dates back for thousands of years. Aristotle provided evidence for the spherical shape of Earth. So, I mean, this is something that is not just modern conspiracy. Aristotle, a Greek philosopher from way back when, 6th to 5th century BC, had an idea that it was a spherical Earth. Support for the flat Earth in early Egyptian and Mesopotamian thought the world was portrayed as a disk floating in the ocean. So, as you remember, Columbus, even, he had to go around and basically, these explorers were thinking that the Earth was flat back then too, until they, circumnavigated. I believe it was Magellan. Was it Magellan who circumnavigated the world? Another thing that I know that the Navy has done is circumnavigated the Earth here today. That was one of the very first things that I ever said to my flat Earth friend. I said, how does I explain circumnavigation, which is where you go around the entire planet? Me personally, I have done I've traveled around the entire planet. And if we're going off the flat Earth diagram, right? So if we just go pull up the flat Earth diagram one more time, my flight pattern, when I did, go around the entire world, let's see if we can find a good disk here that really paints the picture. Well, nonetheless, we'll just use the this flat Earth diagram, right, where they stretch out the map. I went from Phoenix to Montreal, to London, to Dubai, to Asia, back around to San Francisco. That, I called that circumnavigation of the Earth. But on a flat Earth theory, you'd have something. The route would feel different to me because of how I did it, right? But anyways, I think that's kind of some of the stuff that you can look at. Also, if you're in an airplane, do you see the curvature of the Earth? If you're on the ocean and you've got many, 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 many miles to look and you have a telescope, will you start to see the curvature of the Earth if you take that telescope and really take it long range, right? It's just the idea that the Earth is flat, I just can't buy into it. Although I have seen some fairly odd images. I mean, this Tesla car in space, like, it did kind of look CGI. Like, this does kind of look a little bit, I'm not saying it's fake, but it does kind of look a little bit odd, doesn't it? I mean, that kind of is a little bit weird. Another thing that flat earthers say, or people who say that we never landed on the moon, they like to say that, well, why is there no stars in space? Okay? And, obviously you don't see stars right here, right? Whenever they're landing on the moon, when they land on the moon, how come we don't see stars up there? Well, we see what this looks like it's there, but how come these other ones don't have stars? And that's kind of a question. I guess they've put see, and then you see them all of a sudden, and then you have like Mars rover. Like, what's up with the Mars rover? I mean, some of these images look a little bit too 4K-ish. Like, that's supposed to be a real image. So that some of these productions, I could see where some of the debate would come about, because some of these do look a little bit studio-ish. Like, this doesn't. If this kind of looks you can tell when there's a green screen. Some of these look like there could be a green screen. Now, that's a debate for a whole nother day. It is, have we actually even gone to outer space? But we have satellites in orbit, and that would explain cell phone technology, and we know about satellites. There's no getting around satellites. I mean, we've sent things into orbit. The question is there a round circular Earth, right? So, guys, share your thoughts on this. It is quite the interesting subject. Like I said, it was one of the first subjects that someone requested that I talk about. It wasn't my choice to talk about flat Earth, but I think it's an interesting subject, especially if we're just seeking truth, and that's the most important thing. Let's get it out there. If you guys are new to this channel and you like conversations like this, do subscribe to JJ Talks and drop a comment below. And turn on the bell if you want to get notified when we open up the discussions like this.